Hello, good morning. Well, I planned to start this a little bit earlier, but, well, Palm Springs and, shall we say, internet and all sorts of fun things started piling on top of each other. But did get a nice start this morning. Hello. I see people, I see you. Hi, Lars. Got a beautiful start this morning. Jillian and I went bicycle riding before it got too hot. And we stopped to look at the sun, which we always do. Hello, Dana. Hello, Ida. And we were having a beautiful time. Rode around, looked at the houses, looked at the trees, picked a couple of fresh dates. It was a beautiful morning. And Jennifer, nice to see you. And so, you know, when I do take these bike rides, which is, you know, it's a change for me. Hi, Renee. Renee from Peru and Arta. Everyone's here. How beautiful. Even Anna. You know, it's a beautiful change for me because I have always been a sleeper. To me, if I were buying a clock for my bedroom, I wanted one that started in the afternoon, not in the morning. So very nice changes, learning, as I mentioned to some of you. Hey, Alejandro and Alina, that, you know, I don't even pull the shades down anymore. Good morning, Justin. And we get up early, sometimes before the sun wakes up, and we'll go out, we'll ride our bikes while it's still cool enough, and then we look for a spot where the sun is rising. You know, I was listening, we were listening to a presentation, hi Lula, by Andrew Huberman, and we looked into the concept of what is called first light. First light is a beautiful way to start off the day. It allows you to be more present, more alert, and really overall, hey Ellie, in a good mood, in better focus. And why is that? It has a lot to do with dopamine. Now this is kind of interesting because dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's something, you know, produced in the brain as opposed to a hormone. Sort of like the opposite of dopamine in a sense might be the hormone adrenaline. Adrenaline is produced in stress and eventually becomes very tiring. It's like a quick false energetic high and then a crash. Dopamine is something that has a lot to do with well, let's look at it this way. When you are exposed to first light, hey Carla and Samantha, your brain starts to produce dopamine. It's a level that's naturally raised when you're feeling like, for instance, you're on the right track, you're in your higher purpose. And it's supposed to happen in the morning, you know, like when we would go to sleep naturally when the sun went down, and we would wake up when the sun came up. It's if we're exposed to light, bright light, especially maybe between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. when we're supposed to be asleep, it interrupts what's called the dark phase, meaning the sleeping phase of our circadian rhythm, and it actually can be pro-depressive, not something you really want to look for. But when the dopamine is produced naturally with first light, it resets your mood, sort of like laughter resets your mood. So the concept is, go out around the time of first light, and don't stare directly into the sun. We know that's not healthy, although I'll take a little look at it for a minute. But expose yourself to this first light. Hey, Kimberly. Expose yourself to this first light for maybe 2 to 10 minutes in the morning, and it really just sets you in a nice place. It quiets the part of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is a very interesting part. It's divided in two halves. And without getting into a lot of detail about what the left half does and what the right half does, it does play a role, one part of it, in happiness, but it has a large role to do with perceived threats and fear and anxiety and concept when it's active. And the dopamine helps calm and quiet the amygdala. You know what else does? The eye registers in reconnective healing. Studies have shown that what's called lateralized eye movements, you know, the back and forth movements that we see often in the eyes, quiet the amygdala. The reconnective healing registers are quieting the amygdala. And this is really quite interesting because you know how people come out of the reconnective healing sessions saying that they were neither asleep nor awake, but somewhere more real. And the dopamine studies show that they bring you into a state that's not quite sleep and not quite awake, but what they call a tight focus, which is really what the University of Arizona studies have shown us about reconnective healing, that it brings you into a state of quiescence, which is not awake, not asleep, but a very super high focus. So while we were bike riding, I was thinking about this. You know, often we'll put in our earphones and listen to someone speaking on interesting topics, good speakers, sometimes TED Talks and others, and Chopra and Rupert Spira and Eckhart Tolle. And I was thinking about how reconnective healing brings us into awareness and what's called space consciousness. I was listening to an interview, a conversation between Russell Brand, who I just love. He's brilliant and hysterical, and Eckhart Tolle. And one of the things that came up in that conversation was that Eckhart considers the most important thing in human life to be the awareness of space consciousness. Isn't that interesting? Then he said, it's not the awareness of space consciousness. It's exactly what we have been telling you for the past 20-some years. It's that awareness is consciousness, or as Eckhart puts it, awareness is the space consciousness. It's so simple. In moments of space consciousness, you experience a moment of no thought, where you're not asleep, and you're not below thought. You've actually risen above thinking. Because this is interesting, you know, sometimes we, you know, drugs, alcohol, other things can take us out of thought, but bring us below thought. Space consciousness allows us to rise above thought for moments. People who meditate work for expanding those moments. But in reconnective healing, we've all experienced being in that state of space consciousness, above thought, beyond the conscious thinking mind, beyond the thinking mind. For these extended periods, you are present, but you're not thinking. There's nothing there to think about. You are in what we like to think of as essence identity. Essence identity. You can think of that as the transcendent dimension of who you are. Eckhart says that this is what the Buddha referred to as emptiness, or the dimension of spaciousness. But fascinatingly enough, we remain in that state, and we have the great honor, pleasure, if we were aware of pleasure in that state. It's like ecstatic, beyond consciousness, of being in it for extended periods of time. And I believe that the more we're in that space, the more we bring that back and experience it, have it for longer periods in our waking everyday life. Now, that does not mean we have to be in that space from the position of the client, the person receiving reconnective healing. We are in that state. Yes, you're right, Jennifer. It was quite a long interview. I think it was almost 2 hours, but it was really wonderful. I listened to it twice. Jillian turned me onto it. Maybe we can find it and post it for you here if I think of it, if I remember, if someone reminds me. But when Jillian and I do reconnective healing sessions via distance, as I know a lot of you who are practitioners are doing reconnective healing sessions via distance right now, because that's a great way to honor and respect the physical distancing that is essentially being recommended to us by the World Health Organizations. We experience that as in the facilitation of sessions. Focus now on your sessions when you do that. How many times do you find yourself sort of like leaving and you have to bring yourself back? Leaving and you want to bring yourself back. I'd found that I start to leave sessions. Sometimes I'm just in there and I start to leave. I go, oh, I hope I'm not falling asleep. Wait a minute. I have to wake up. I have to stand up. I have to bring myself back. But maybe what I'm experiencing is this sort of misplaced fear of what I wasn't recognizing when I thought I was falling asleep. Hey, Miriam. And really, we were entering into that state above and beyond the thinking mind. We were entering into that state rising above thought. I think it's a fascinating experience to have. I've started realizing an equation in there for me, not a mathematical equation. I'm not a math person. I mean, in the equation of healing, I find that when I begin to work, you know, when I do sessions in person, like most of you, we show you how we do it, and we're standing. So we're more likely to be, you know, cognizantly aware of what's going on when we're standing up, although there are times that you start to move into that different space. But when I'm sitting, I find that as I begin to move, there are certain ways I can move that create an awareness of the resonant vibrations of this reconnective healing intelligence, of the energy, the light, the information. And I get into it, and it starts to take me into that space. And to bring myself out, I sort of bring that feeling into something I'm less aware of, less feeling in that way, but then I come back to it because it's so wonderful and I enter into that space. So I'm beginning to learn a balance between the two spaces. It's definitely worthy of exploration and discovery. It doesn't happen when you're making big movements. When we're going really slowly, we're receiving, there's an awareness, there's a wakeful consciousness that then, I believe, something in us begins to rise above and things change. Is it possible? I'm asking this question. I already know the answer is yes, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is it possible that not only is this us touching our awareness, our essence, but is the universe realizing its essence through you? So I ask you again, is the universe realizing its essence through you? Now, before some of us start to go, wow, what a kind of a grand concept, let's touch on quantum physics for a moment. Even if we look at Nassim Haramein and other really breakthrough, forefront explorers in the field of quantum physics, they're the first to tell you that, you know, what happens in one proton in your body is shared with all the protons in your body, is shared with all the protons in the people you're interacting with, and the people you don't know, and all the protons on the planet, and all the protons in the universe. And therefore, our expansion, as we just realize and experience whatever we are in realization of, whatever we're experiencing of, wherever we're going, our continued expansion is the expansion of the universe. So our curiosity to explore and experience is universal design. Our expansion is the expansion of the universe, and therefore the universe is realizing its essence through you. You know, I'm listening to people talk about the concepts of spiritual teaching, and I'm just amazed at how they are the same understandings we've come to of reconnective healing. The great teachers will tell you that spiritual teaching doesn't add content to the mind. Spiritual healing is there, spiritual teaching is there to remove content, to remove the obscurations. Reconnective healing doesn't add content. It removes what blocks, obscures, inhibits us from being who and what we are. It removes that content. It's sort of like, it's the reminder. We'll go back again to the blue sky concept. Look up at the sky when it's clear. What color is it when it's blue? What color is the sky when all you see are clouds? It's still blue. The sky is blue. We just don't see it because the clouds obscure it. The contents obscure it. Removing the clouds in this metaphor, of course we don't want to remove all clouds, obviously. We appreciate the rain that they bring and the shade that they bring, especially in this heat. It was 118 the other day. But to remove the clouds is to remove the obscuration or the interference with our health and with our presence. Thank you, Leonardo. With our presence on all levels. In the vastness beyond the content of our mind is this dimension of spacious presence. How can I say this? We are just there as presence, taking in the sense of our perception. Yes, Jennifer, thank you. There are no rules. We play with an awareness. I can't read all of your comments because there are so many that are coming up so fast. I can only begin to see some of them. So in reconnective healing, you receive and become presence. You're taking in the experience of healing. It's an alert listening, an alert seeing. You know how often we talk about that we're the observer and the observed, the seer and the scenery, the witness and the witnessed. But actually, before that, before we step into that subject-object split, seer and seen, witness and witnessed, observer and observed, we are simply seeing. We are simply witnessing. We are simply observing or observation. It's all one. It's a state of. And reconnective healing is that prolonged space consciousness, that prolonged spacious presence. It allows us to be more present in our entire life. It allows us to be in that moment. To be in the present moment because the present moment is. To be what is. It's kind of silly to argue with what is because it is. And reconnective healing and the reconnective healing intelligence just is. And this comes to us through receiving. We are receiving these insights. We are receiving these understandings. We're receiving it in the language of the RH intelligence. It's communicating to us, but not verbally, so we don't always come back with a complete verbal understanding that we can describe and write down in a sentence and email off to a friend. I did a reconnective healing distance session yesterday, and the woman was explaining, I understood this. I was told this, but there were no words, there was no voice. You know, they talk about we are space like I'm looking in this room, and there's furniture, there's a sofa behind me, there's a painting, there's a picture somewhere else, there's tables, there's chairs. These are objects. But we are not the objects. We are the space in the room that allows in. And the space is always, it's always there. Because it is. Because we are. Because you are. And in that space, there's no ego. There's no ego. Did you ever notice during the reconnective healing sessions, especially when you're receiving, it is an egoless space. You are that space. You are not the ego that comes into that space. Hey, Sebastiano. It's a space of ease, and the ego is never at ease. The ego is never fulfilled. The ego never feels worthy enough. There's always an ego, the underlying sense of lack, an insufficiency, a feeling of not being enough. You know, they say a dog has no ego, has no problem with its body image or with self-esteem. Ego is thought form. So during the reconnective healing sessions, if there's no ego, where did it go? Did it go to the ego a go-go? I mean, where did the ego go? Where does it go? And even when we are facilitating, we allow ourselves to, when we are facilitating and we allow ourselves to disappear into that session we're facilitating, there is no ego. There might be ego for some as they enter. But when we really, or as we begin the session, but as we allow ourselves to be in that session, even for those who enter with ego, it's gone. It can't exist in that space. The language of reconnective healing takes us beyond the thinking mind, and there is no thought form there, hence there is no ego. Because the ego is thought form. And this is a dimension of consciousness that is not thinking. It's the blue sky that's always there. We overlook it because of the noisiness of our thoughts, the furniture in the room. We are not the content, we are the essence of the space. We're not the furniture, we're the essence of the space. The space that we are, not even saying the space that we are in, the space that we are is always perfect. It is health, it is abundance, it is love, it is awareness, it is receiving, it is our essence. It can't be destroyed. Our essence can't be destroyed. It's timeless. Our essence is timeless. This is what reconnective healing is here to show us. I want to say it's here to give us access to. There is the reconnection. And then there is the access it provides, the access it allows. So, now that I've played with some of my thoughts from my bike ride this morning, maybe I'll ride the bikes a bit more. I will, in coming mornings. And let's see what else we have to come up to talk about. Hey, Fabiola. Let's see what else we can bring to our sharing here in some of these Facebook Lives that I want to be doing. Anyway, we are going to be launching soon the Reconnective Healing Life Community. So be on the lookout for that. There may be some information in a little posting link here to whatever's attached to this Facebook Live. I'm still figuring out Facebook Live, so I'm sure it's there somewhere. But we'll be doing different things. You can hang out with me and Jillian. We'll be bringing in new topics each week. We'll be popping into your feed with thoughts of the week, maybe some energy interactions, some shared meditations. We're going to bring in some leading voices in our community, from our community. Yes, some people from outside of our community, but in this community we have wonderful new community leaders that we want to be sharing with you, and they want to share their stories, and we want them to, and their experiences and their insights. We're going to provide in the RH Life community a space to talk about what you're observing and noticing and experiencing, and give you access to some of these leaders who can help guide you, answer your questions, let you just play, be a sounding board at times, and then give you potential context and insight. We're also going to give you access to our ever-growing library of our archives over the past, well, probably 20 years or so. You'll see webinars, clips from some of the Catalyst weekends, from some of the earlier Reconnective Healing training programs, some clips from the portal, explorations of specific topics, general pieces on philosophy, and we want you to bring in your voice to be part of the next phase of taking in the totality of the past 25 years, helping to bring it forward. So we're going to bring more each month. We're going to bring more each month. No, I guess my mic has been making noise. I've been informed while I've been moving. Oh well, hopefully you're listening more to the message and less to the noise. Maybe you're listening more to the frequencies and less to my words. Whatever it is. Thanks for sharing my morning with me. We won't always be necessarily in this place. It depends on the sun and the temperature and where we can go, and as I walk around the neighborhood outside, where we can avoid lawnmowers and leaf blowers and trash trucks, all contributing to the sound effects of the tapestry of the background of our lives. So nice to share a little bit of this morning life with you, and I look forward to seeing you here again, and as we bring on the Reconnective Healing Life community. Pleasure. Bye-bye. Much love.